This is Aaron with the I Had to Say It podcast. Welcome to the Bleach Bros Top 50 Movies of All Time. In this episode, the guys rank their top films from 50 to 41. Now let's introduce your hosts, B-Word and Jake the Hater.
Welcome into the Bleach Brothers podcast, Top 50 Movies of All Time. This is your host, B-Word. I'm here with my co-host, Jake the Hater. And Jake, I have one thing for you before we get started. Are you ready for this?
No, because you said co-host, not good buddy, not friend, nothing. So no, now I'm nervous because I think there's a problem. I think there's a problem because just my Sheldon brain, it's not the same. So I guess give it to me.
So we found out early in our podcast journey that you are a fan of ducks. So I have a story to tell you. 3 women go to heaven. St. Peter tells them that no matter what, they cannot step on a duck. The first woman, not paying attention, instantly steps on a duck. St. Peter takes one of the ugliest men in heaven and chains him to the woman for all eternity as punishment. Sometime later, the second woman steps on a duck. Same thing. St. Peter takes one of the ugliest men in heaven and chains him to her to spend all eternity. The third woman, watching their story, says, I don't want to go through that kind of punishment. So she literally goes out of her way to not step on any ducks. She goes months and months without stepping on a duck. One day, St. Peter brings the most handsome man the woman had ever seen and chains him to the woman. The woman looks at the man and excitedly asks, what did I do to deserve to be chained to you for all eternity? The man says, I don't know what you did, but I stepped on a duck. So there you go. That's my duck story for you.
She's from Portland because she's a he, right? Is that a Caitlyn Jenner duck?
No. That has nothing to do with our trans community. That has everything to do with the fact that she was ugly.
I thought I had a penis.
No,
everything has a penis.
She was ugly, and the guy stepped on a duck, and so that was his punishment, was to be chained to her, basically. So anyway, I read that yesterday, and you were the first person I thought about because I know that you love ducks. You love the Oregon Ducks. You love everything to do with ducks.
Oh, fuck that. No. So my question is, did you think of me because 1, I'm ugly, 2, because ducks, 3, because you want to be chained to me for eternity, or all the above?
I think that your wife is one of the most beautiful women in the world, and I think that she probably stepped on a duck.
Would you be chained to me, though? Like, do you think we could
Would
handle
I
each
be
other?
chained to you?
Yeah, like if we got chained together, how do you think we would last?
No. Have you seen those phone booth boxing things? Like, that's how we would be eventually. We would just turn around.
We'd be
in a phone booth. Yeah, and just go to town, dude. Like I love you, but I couldn't be chained to you.
I could be chained to you and deal with it. Because here's the thing. I know I could be the most annoying possible, and you could not achieve the level of annoyance that I could, so I know I'd win.
Well, that's probably fair. Well, for everybody who's tuning in, Jake and I decided that we wanted to do the top 50 movies of all time based on our own preferences, based on our own choices. And so we decided together that we would go ahead and compile our top 50. So as we started recording here, both Jake and I have our top 50 movies already sealed in, and we cannot change these going forward. Each month, on the third week of the month, we will go ahead and record and deliver the next 10 films, which will then culminate in December when we go through our top 10 films. So in this episode, we're going to do movies ranked number 50 through number 41. Now, before we start going through any of these movies, Jake, I do need to say that these are absolutely subjective. These are not anything to do with Rotten Tomatoes scores, nothing to do with box office. It has nothing to do with anything that you might look at and say, okay, this is a determination. The only determination that we collectively came into is what are your favorite movies, right? So it's completely subjective that way.
Right. I'm already unhappy with my list. I'm unhappy with yours. I don't even know what it is. And I'm unhappy with people's opinions because there's going to be some asshole out there that's like, Citizen Kane's the greatest movie. It's not even, no. This is what I want to watch. This is things I could put in all the time. The things I enjoy, my top 50 of all time, your top 50 of all time.
So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? What do
I
you
want
want to do?
you to go first. I want you to start this train because I'm going to go step on some ducks so we can get chained together and finish this list out.
So at number 50, my movie is a 2000 American biographical sports film. It was directed by Jerry Bruckheimer, stars Denzel Washington. The movie is called Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is definitely on my top 50. I do not think that it has to be on everybody's top 50, hence where it's at on the top 50. But man, I love this movie. There's such a good cast in this movie. It's a great storyline in this movie. Denzel knocked it out of the park in this movie. Overall, man, I thought that this is for sure one of my favorite movies, hence why it's on the list. But I do think that it is something to be said that if it is lower on other people's lists, I can totally see that.
It's not even on mine, so there's something to be said with that. Good movie though. Good, like here's the problem. Now I'm already having B-word. We're on the first movie. We're on the first movie, and then I look at what mine is, and I'm like, I think I did the homework wrong. Like, when you were in school and like you felt like you cheated or you need to like redo your work now, because mine is The Pest, starring John Leguizamo. The Miami scam artist, Pets Fargus, is on the run from the Scottish mob and a German headhunter. And it's
The Pest is comedy. I don't even know that I would rank The Pest in top 100.
It's one of my favorite fucking movies from 1990. Here's the thing. It's that movie I could always throw on. I'm always happy when it's on. 1997. Great film. It's so bad it's good. That's the best part. It is like terrible. It is a terrible movie. But it's so good. Now I will say this. For number 50, it was between two movies. This one and Skinny Tiger, Fatty Dragon, just because. And I see your face.
I don't know that I'm going to like this list at all.
But that's really my number 50. I really thought, like, what do I want to watch? What's one of my favorite, like, nostalgic films growing up? Like, I watched this movie back and forth nonstop as a kid growing up. 97, how old were we B-word then? That would have made us like what?
8th grade ish, somewhere in there.
Perfect film 13. For 8th grade. Perfect film for my brain. So yeah, that's number 50, The Pest. I'll skip ahead of you, and I think maybe we can do a little back and forth here. Speaking of what you brought the show in with, ducks. My number 49 is Howard the Duck.
I thought you were going to say the Mighty Ducks. I was like, dude.
No. Dude. And I will say this. I will preface, there's not a lot of kids movies on here, and I had to eliminate most of them because I'm like, how often do I actually rewatch them? Or when you try, you're like, is it really as good as I thought? But Howard the Duck, 1986, essentially about a duck when practical effects were way better than they are now. Not that we can't make that stuff, but they say it's cheaper to do CGI even though they suck. Great film. How can you think anything bad about this movie, B-word? A girl gets it on with a duck. There's aliens. A duck walking around talking, being crude, rude, and awesome. So yeah, Howard the Duck, number 49.
I enjoy Howard the Duck. It would not make my top 50. So I think our lists are going to be entirely different going forward. I do like Howard the Duck, though. And if people don't like Howard the Duck, like, appreciate what was when it came out. It's actually a pretty decent film. So I do think that this movie might be on your top. And if I were to rank it on your list, I do think it would be a lot higher than my number 49. But this 2016 American science fiction drama film that stars Amy Adams is called Arrival. Arrival is a killer movie. I do not think that Arrival is better than Interstellar, which we've had that conversation before, that this is like your theory of two. But Arrival is a perfect film. Like, I will give that to Arrival. It is a perfect film. I enjoy the storyline. The acting is incredible. The way that everything moves in the movie with the storyline is just really, really good. So for that, Arrival is my number 49. And with that, I'm also going to skip you because it seems like that's kind of the thing here. So my number 48, I do not think is on your top 50 at all. My number 48 is Rain Man. Came out in 1988.
Definitely not.
It is a buddy comedy, dramedy, really. Tom Cruise, Dustin Hoffman. Great story, I think. It's one of those ones where Dustin Hoffman had an amazing performance. I thought that Tom Cruise did a good job in the film. The film is fun, and it's also been, paid homage to in films like The Hangover and other films like that. I think it was a defining moment film for both of these actors that really helped propel them to further success in their careers. So that is my number 48.
I have a feeling that you're going to have a lot of older movies compared to mine. You're going to have essentially what people would consider better movies.
I literally just came out with Arrival 2016, and you're going to say older movies.
No, but like I just have a feeling, like I said, going forward, I just have a feeling like you're gonna go that older route. I think go for that newer route, because I also think my like first like 10, the 50 through 41 or whatever, how many that is, 9, I can't count.
That's 10.
People are gonna hate my list, right? In the sense of like, man, Jake, like really? But like you got to remember, this is my bottom tier. These are top 50 all time. So this is my bottom tier of my top. So the next one for me is 100 Girls. Now, 100 Girls is a romantic comedy. If it were more like a teenage bro frat boy romantic comedy made in 2000. Matt, the main character, spends the night in an elevator after a power outage in a college girl's dorm. He has sex with the chick, and he has to end up finding who she was because there was a power outage, and the only thing he has to go off of is her panties. So he tries to find the matching bra because, as men, we know they always wear matching underwear at all times in all situations. So it totally makes sense. This was the go-to like comedy for me as a young junior in high school type guy, sophomore, thinking like, yes, this is how bros act in college. This was that movie I could throw on when a girl would say, hey, let's watch a romantic comedy. This was my go-to film. Totally crude humor, totally dumb stuff. I mean, I quote this movie all the time, so I could not leave it off. If the travesties listening, him and I, the angle of the dangle equals the cubic of the pubic.
That's a terrible movie.
Let me
change that. It's not a terrible movie. It's not a terrible movie. But that movie and 40 Days and 40 Nights are very similar to me. And 40 Days and 40 Nights is just like not same plot, just same feeling, same tone. But that movie, I don't know, man. Like, I'm going to be flat honest with you. Like, I didn't have like I guess there might, dude, you got me speechless here. I don't like your pick. I don't like your pick.
I know you don't.
And it's fair. It's fair. So what's your next one?
Starship Troopers.
Jesus Christ.
There's boobs in it. Aliens, guns.
There's boobs in it. There's
angry people. You get to see Doogie Howser become a freaking psych. What is it? What are they called? The people that can like see things with their brain. They're so powerful with their brain. He's like a
psychic or whatever.
Yeah. He's a psychic fucking military guy. Hell yeah, Denise Richards trying to make out with a guy that wants to be Jean-Claude Van Damme, and then a girl with great tits in the shower trying to make out with him with people arms getting blown off and giant praying mantis bugs killing people. You're telling me that's not a great film? You're telling me that's not a good Saturday night with your bros? You're telling me you can't have a bag of popcorn, a Coca-Cola, you're watching Starship Troopers, you're not happy? You're not happy, B-word?
I'm happy. It's just not top
47
50 material.
It's
not
47.
Top 50 material.
It's in the top 50 of all time. It's number 47.
Not top 50. So my number 47 is actually a really, really good movie. I'm pretty sure you like this movie. I have no clue if it's on your top 50 or not. It is a 1998 American crime drama. Stars Edward Norton, Edward Furlong, goes over things like white power, neo-Nazism. American History X is my number 47. By the look of on your face right now, you're like, fuck, how did I leave that off my list? So I can basically tell you that this is not on your list, and I'm seeing instant regret, but American History X is my number 47. Any comments on that one?
Well, yeah, it's not on my list. I'm pissed off because this is that moment, like, and just being upfront for all the fans, we are not editing these. Like, we had a hard time coming up with these. We've talked about this episode forever. We had a few back and forths on things like, hey, are we, like like when me and you talked behind the scenes, like, oh, did you scratch this off? Did you? And we didn't tell each other what our list was, but we knew we had a hard time. But the funny thing is, and I know you're going to go to it, and I want to say my 46, and the reason is I'm going to interrupt is because what you said, this is almost like a crime in 1998. So is mine. My next film is based in 1998, a crime drama with Denzel Washington and John Goodman called Fallen, where the angel, a demon from hell, essentially like corrupts inhabits somebody's body and commits crimes, and their whole goal is to go figure out how these things are happening. But when you said that, everything seemed to be lining up because you're like, a crime drama, 1998, great actors. I'm like, we're gonna have the same fucking movie finally, and then it didn't happen. Then I went, oh man, he picked a way better movie than me.
Yeah, no, my number 46, since you already spoiled yours, is it's a Clint Eastwood film, both directed and starred. 2008. It is a drama, Gran Torino. I think Gran Torino is one of Clint Eastwood's best films. I love the fact that he is just this old curmudgeon. Love the memes and the gifs that go on about his facial expressions. Overall, man, really, really good film. I do think that the ending is a little predictable. That would be my only qualm with this movie. But overall, I love this film. I can watch this film over and over again. If we can just, talk about Clint Eastwood for a second, probably one of the best directors right now. When you start talking about films, you got a $1 Million Baby, you've got American Sniper. I mean, you've got a whole lot of different movies from Clint Eastwood right now that do very, very well at the box office. Gran Torino is probably my favorite directorial movie that he's done.
I'll agree with you. It's my favorite directorial movie he did. I think it's a great film. It's one of those, though, that I've only watched maybe twice my whole life. And so for me, for this list, it was like, what movies have I watched over and over again? Which movies can I always throw on? Which movies are so memorable? I remember every little scene from it. Not that I don't from that film. That's a great fucking movie. I'll admit that's a great fucking movie. If we were doing a top 100 list, is it on there? Yeah. Top 50 for me? No. Do you think he's a better actor or a better director, though?
I think he's a better director. I like him as an actor. I don't want to take anything away from him as an actor, but I like him more as a director.
And why is that?
I think that he has a great vision for the movie from start to finish. Like as it comes into scenes, I think that he does focus on little details, but he also wants the story told in a particular way, which is kind of funny because he hasn't done a movie with his son. Right. I don't remember his son's first name,
Scott Eastwood.
But Scott Eastwood, and I don't think that I think the reason for that is that he doesn't want to he doesn't want to blur the lines between dad and director. And it's interesting when I put it that way, because I do think that Clint Eastwood has an impeccable reputation in Hollywood, even with his politics the way that they are, but he has succeeded and has moved forward for decades. I mean, we're talking almost 50, 60 years in the profession. He's done a phenomenal job with it. And I think that he brings in different decades worth of knowledge and background and all that sort of stuff to bring to the table. So with that, I do think that his directorial career, if you will, is better than his acting career. If you think of it this way, Clint Eastwood's movies have largely been Westerns. You've got a lot of the spaghetti Westerns back in the day. You have some more modern Westerns like with Unforgiven or movies like that. I don't think of Clint Eastwood when I think of drama or comedy or anything like that. He has done those. I just don't see him in those roles.
See, I agree with you in the sense, like, when I thought of it, the question, right? I thought of my own answer. I was pulling a B word in the sense of, like, if you say acting, there's essentially two type of roles he plays, two style of roles he plays, Western or modern, like almost like, I guess, mobster cop, right? But it's the same character, just in a different era. And then you're like, yeah, but his directorial, it's very like certain, I guess, more, I'm going to say it, I could be wrong, but like right-wing-esque, you know what I mean? More conservative thought process behind the films. However, I think he's a better director in the sense I think he brings out the best in certain actors from all the films that he's like directed. Like he's done a phenomenal job of getting them to put out on film some of their best acting. So I'd say a better director, but no, it's interesting because like he's not on my list for anything, but he's one of those people. Like if you did top 50 male actors of all time, yeah, he's in there. But good pick, dude. Good pick.
Well, before we get to your next pick, because that was my number 26.
46.
Sorry,
26.
46. You've already said you're 46. Before we get into our top 5, let's kind of peel back the onion here a little bit, or roll back the curtain. When you put this list together, what were the hardest things that you ran into? We talked about this a little earlier today. We didn't really get into it much, but when you're talking about your top 10, your top 15, your top 20, I think you and I both had an easier time getting into that. Now we're talking about our bottom 10 in the top 50. And where are you at with that? Like, where was your thought process at? Because I feel like you have eraser marks all over your paper.
I actually don't. You'd be surprised, and I'll hold it up for you later to actually look at. But it's like top 10 was the easiest thing. Like I can name the top 10 films. Like I think most people can. Like these are my favorite. These are what I can watch all the time. Top 5, I think it's funny when you add numbers, it's easier for people to do because you can interchange a few things. When you get to 50, you almost get to the convoluted point where it's like, okay, where am I going to put Arrival? Is it 31 or is it 46? Right? Like how's that ranking going? So the few things I did was, one, I always go with the same ranking, whether it's an everlasting segment or anything. It's watchability. How often have I done it? How often do I think of it? How much have I quoted it? What's it mean to me? And what level of importance or nostalgic feel does it have? It is funny. I noticed, as I said, I'm going to have some newer films, but there were times when I was putting this list together, it almost feels like I'm either in a decade during a certain like chunk, like 40 through let's just say 45 through 40, not that they are, but like you might notice, oh, they're in the same vein or they're this and that. Because also when you started writing after the top 10, like I like this creature feature, oh, but what about that creature feature, or what about this sci-fi? And there are moments that I was finding myself writing like same style films, and I would do the cheating method of being like, I wrote it as 12, the next one's got to be 16 because it can't be that close. I thought of it at the same time while I wrote it. Doesn't mean that I thought of it as 12 and 13. So I think the hardest thing was actually putting them in that exact order after a certain number. Top 10, easy. 10 or 11 through 25, a little harder. And then after 25 was almost impossible in the sense of like, do they actually rank? Like, I'll say 50, The Pest, easy. I knew it was going to be the bottom of my list because it's probably the worst film, like in quotes, right, of like an actual movie. Like, is it a great movie? No. For me, is it? Yeah. But like, it's easy to say it's 50 because, of course, if I put it 31, people are going to be like, you really think The Pest is better than la da 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 da? No. But subjectively, there are other films on these lists that I'm like having a hard time with. What about you?
See, I came up with the films that I knew had to be on the list. So I wrote those down. I jotted them down. I said, okay, there's no way that I can pass on these films. Then I went, okay, who are my favorite actors? And I kind of went through their filmography and I started cherry picking a little bit of those. Then I went through directors and same thing. I went through some of their movies. You can't, I don't feel like you have to have every movie within a good director, if that makes sense. I don't think that it has to be on a top 50 list. But obviously, there's going to be some that cross over. And then finally, I went through genres. Like, what is a good comedy film that I think that should be on the list? What are some good dramas that I will always stick back to? What are some superhero films or some sci-fi films that I think deserve to be on this list? And then kind of went there. And then finally, I think this was the hardest part, was doing the comparison of how they're ranked. Is this movie really better than this movie? And that's where I got stuck. That's where I got stuck a lot. So I'll throw out 2 movies that aren't on my list. But if I said, okay, what's a better movie, Grease or The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, as an example, both musicals, both films. You would say Grease. I think that Grease is better, but it's a close second to do The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So,
Right.
but then it's not just that. It's like, okay, well, where does it compare to the next movie or the next movie or the next movie? I found myself spending a lot of time trying to dissect that, and that was where it was really hard. So before we get into our top 5 of our bottom 10 and our top 50, let's go ahead and take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. Hey guys, this is B-Word here at the Bleach Brothers Podcast. Just a friendly reminder that we are sponsored by Jerky Pro, and if you are a fan of jerky, make sure to go to www.jerky.pro, use code BleachBros5 at checkout to get yourself a little bit of a discount. Both Jake and I are huge fans of jerky, and Jake working in the beef industry and me being just a fellow fat kid, we absolutely swear by Jerky Pro. You will not miss out by ordering Jerky Pro. Do not let some of the sticker shock you. There are free shipping options, multiple flavors, etc., so forth. If you do order Jerky Pro, make sure to use code BleachBros5 at checkout.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm here to help with that.
And we are SP Filmviewers.
Each week, we take a deep dive into films that Sophie is seeing for the first time, some of which are deemed classics, some of which are my favourites, and some are just to try and get a reaction from her.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have a lot of fun talking about what we've watched.
And we hope you have fun listening to our light-hearted thoughts and ramblings on this cinematic journey.
So tune in every Thursday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Welcome back into the Bleach Brothers Podcast. Top 50 movies of all time. Episode 1 of the Part 5 series, or however you want to put it, B-Word. But I found a quandary that I had when I was writing this list out, and I wanted to see if you had the same thing. We've done everlasting segments. We've done top, actresses or actors or styles of films or whatever. We've done 80s movies. We've done Leonardo DiCaprio. We've done stuff like that. Did you find yourself contradicting yourself with this list based on things we've said in the past? Because I feel like I have. Like, there were times, like when we did the 80s films, like I'm looking at my list now going, I'm ranking a different film above that now, and I had a hard time with that. Did you have the same problem?
I don't know if I ever focused on that, and it is something that I think that I probably would do. A lot of our lists are subjective. I do think that makes this not a scientific podcast. That's why we're an entertainment podcast, because we don't necessarily base things in fact per se. But it wouldn't shock me if my lists were contradictory to what we had before. I do think, though, that again, as we get to some of those top movies, I think my rankings are a little bit more definitive, a little bit more in stone, and very well might be the same. But as we're going through some of these bottom lists, you could probably catch me in that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was just one of those things where I was like arguing with myself, like, Jake, how could you have said like 4 months ago, if any fan really is paying attention to that, like, this is a better film, or this acting was better, or this is my favorite of all time, and then it's like, oh yeah, but it's number 47 now, and the next one will be number 8.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time with that. Right. But I mean, that was also the joy of this, because I went into it thinking, I'm going to write this out, and I'm going to make as minimal possible as scratch marks, fixes, or anything. I'm literally going to write it. I'm going to sit there and go, can I live with this? And there were things I could, and things like, okay, I need to change this up. And then the final thing I did is I went up to my movie collection, because you know me, I have that giant movie collection in my game room. And I went through and looked at DVDs, which was probably my biggest fucking mistake. Because I went, left that off. The first shelf, there's 20 films on there. I left off like half of these. I'm like, do they really make the top 50 though? And so then I went shelf by shelf,
right.
Like, out of these, is there one that would make it, or out of these? And then as you're talking, like when you said American History X, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, how do I leave that off? I love that film. I talk about that film a lot, and it didn't even make my radar. And I think that's what's hard about this when you're saying it's subjective, because you're sitting there thinking like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to watch. And then it's like, but it didn't even make a blip. It didn't make a blip. Like, how do I not feel that about that?
Yeah.
So,
we have friends who don't listen to the podcast, and so I felt like they were a good out for me to try to cross check my list compared to them. So I did call them and gave the list, and they did offer 2 changes to my list, and one of the changes is actually my number 20 or my number 45, excuse me. But I felt like I wanted to kind of cross check with someone and just to kind of see what their films would be, because I wanted them to try to remind me of films that I may have missed, kind of like with American History X for you. So my number 45 was a film that originally did not make my list, and I felt so embarrassed when this came up. Movie came out in 1984. It's a supernatural comedy film directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, all of the good guys. It's Ghostbusters. I can see you doing your nice little metaphorical pen throw. It doesn't look like Ghostbusters made your top 5. I felt so embarrassed when this didn't make my top 5, because this is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I can't tell you how many times I've watched this movie from when I was a kid all the way up until today. I love the product. I love the series. I love everything about Ghostbusters. My number 45.
No, it's my wife's favorite film of all time, which I find funny. Like, because she can always watch this, the New York nostalgia, like, you know, just the comedy aspect. I didn't get to watch this as a kid. We've talked about that before. This wasn't a film I got to see until later in life. I think I finally was about 10 or 11 when I finally saw it, which, you know, it doesn't seem like that bad, but when it's like, it's been out since 84, it came out a year before I was born, and it took me 11 years to finally see that. Yeah, so it's a good movie. I like it. It's not probably one of my top. It's not even my favorite Bill Murray film. There's other Bill Murray films that I like more than this, even though it's a good film. But no, when you said 1984, I started shaking my head again, going crap, because I have a 1984 film in my top 50 through 41, and I was thinking, okay, we're going to name the same film, and again, you had me at a loss of words because we did not. That was more what the pin throw was about. My 45 is actually a newer film from 2011, Super 8. This was a sci-fi thriller film.
Okay.
By J.J. Abrams. A few things about this. One, I loved during that time J.J. Abrams was doing trailers that didn't really give you enough, and it made you want to go watch the film. It reminded me, now I can say it reminds me a lot of Stranger Things too, but it reminded me of like our newer generation's E.T. Essentially, yes, there's an alien. Yes, there's kids on an adventure. Yes, they're fighting it. But I remember going to see this in the theater just because essentially I wanted to see what was in the train that crashed, because that's all you got in the trailer. And it was a great film. Does it make a super high? And as we know, I love sci-fi. It's probably my favorite. Sci-fi and creature features are probably my favorite films. It doesn't make it that high, but it just reminded me of being a kid. It reminded me of the first time I saw E.T. or Jaws or something different, and have that much excitement and unknowingness going into a film. So that was my number 45. 44 for me is almost a musical. And the reason I say that, it's a movie called Once, 2007 Irish romantic musical drama film. It was directed by John Carney. It stars Glenn Hansard and Margaret Urgalova. They actually were in a band together. It's my go-to I want to impress a girl movie when I was single. Like, let me put something on that you've probably never heard of. A lot of people haven't heard of it. I love Glenn Hansard's music. I'll just say that. He does no wrong. And it's funny because like the more I learn about this film, the more intriguing it became. Like, he was not supposed to star in it. He was just supposed to do the music, and her and him were together, and then they were actually together in real life. And then she ended up cheating on him, and it's almost like in the movie. Like, so it's almost, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Viewer, but it's one of my top films in the sense of great independent filming style, great musical score. Essentially, as I said, it's almost a musical in the sense of a new age musical where there's a lot of music involved. They're artists. They're trying to do that, but it's not like La La Land where they're jumping around, singing, swinging, Grease and all that, and like making the scene about that. It's more, they're in a vacuum store. He's trying to help fix it, and he's just singing to her a lullaby goodnight to make her go to sleep in that. And it's just a great film, a great date film. I'll say that. But that's my next one.
Interesting. I've never seen it, so I have no opinion as far as if it should or should not be on your list. I think you and I will agree that there's not many sequels that are better than the original. But the handful or more of sequels that are better than the original are a lot better than the original in the sense that you go, wow, that's an incredible movie. And this next film that I have on my list is a sequel. It's a sequel within a trilogy. This film came out in 2003, directed by Peter Jackson. It is The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. I love The Lord of the Rings.
Wait, did you say that's the sequel?
It is
Of
the
trilogy?
second
'Cause that's
movie.
the third one. That's the third movie. The Return of the King is the third movie.
Oh,
Two
you're
Towers
right.
Is the second movie.
You're right. I'm so stupid. It is the third movie of the trilogy. My bad. However,
I just wanted to eat you
is
alive before the fans eat you alive, because holy shit, B-word.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, Lord of the Rings: Return of the King is the best of the bunch. I love Lord of the Rings. I have never watched Harry Potter, as we've discussed before. Lord of the Rings was my Harry Potter, if you will. They both came out right around the same time. Again, your theory of two. The Lord of the Rings was a book that I grew up with. It was a book that I read multiple times. I thought that finding this on the big screen was just a phenomenal story, this epic to be able to show us visually. Peter Jackson did a phenomenal job. You talk about having the right cast at the right time. And then the beauty of it is that they filmed the entirety of the series before they actually released it. And I thought that was awesome in a sense that you didn't have different actors that had to take different projects, and now you're switching out actors, which is pretty common in Hollywood. And you also didn't have any issues like that prevented this story from being told. We're seeing some of those things right now in the Marvel series, where now certain actors may or may not come back. Now maybe they're too old, et cetera, so forth. They were really able to capture magic in a bottle with this. So my movie is The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King at number 44.
Well, no, that's a great pick, especially too. I mean, it was smart that the way they filmed it. The difference is with most movies, they actually have the source material to go off of, and they could write all three. And not that other movies can't do that, but like I guess it's almost like an easier way to. It's an easier style of film to do it based on the source material. Great film. It's funny because one of those is on my list eventually. It's not the one that you're talking about. I think it's a good one. I remember going in college to see the marathon of all three films and sit through the director's cuts of those, which I think it was like a 16-hour marathon, and holy shit, I had to pee. Great pick. I like Return of the King. It was one of those though, like if I watched the three, and like I said, I'm not going to spoil which one's my favorite, but the one thing I hate about that movie is when the screen goes to black and comes back and you think it's over, and they're like, okay, now it's over. And then it goes again and you're like, oh shit, now there's an eagle. Oh, it's over. Oh, now there's a volcano. Oh, it's over. No, it's like, holy crap, in the fucking movie. Like when I do that, I'm just over it. I want to get out of there. But good pick. Do you think that, one, I was going to ask you two things. Was one, I did want to bring up the sequel thing because I feel like when I wrote this list, there were some movies where I'm like, do I like the sequel better? Do I like the original better? And I found myself knowing that I never really liked the sequel as good as the first one. Now, do you have the opposite opinion or about the same?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me go through my list right quick. I've got so I'm going to consider Return of the King a sequel, even though it's the third in the trilogy, just because it's not the original film. So
don't try to make yourself feel right about that, but whatever.
No. Just for my reasoning here, but I've got 1, 2. You can kind of say 3, but 3. That's for sure 3. 4, 5, 6. Again, kind of 7. So I'm looking at probably like 8 or 9 sequels on here, maybe 10 sequels on here. And again, this is a top 50, so that's quite a bit of sequels. There's only one that I have the original included as well. Yeah, but I don't. But the Ghostbusters, I don't have any of the sequels on.
No,
I don't have Afterlife. I don't have Ghostbusters.
I didn't know if you meant like there's movies that have sequels that you're not counting. So that's my other point.
Yeah, no.
The second question I'd ask you on that though, B-word, is do you feel like how they filmed Lord of the Rings all at once? Do you feel there are movies out there now that could be made, like whether it be Marvel or whatever, where they could film over like a 3-year span, like a 3 to 5 movie arc now, and do it the same way? Or do you think that was like lightning in a bottle, like you said, a one-time only deal?
I do think that it is a lightning in a bottle, because what you're doing is not only are you locking people into a contract for 3 to 5 years, it eliminates them from being able to work on any project, whether that be TV, anything independent, Broadway, et cetera, so forth. And for actors, you almost have to think about it like a sports person, right? So you're a NBA player. You sign on for this. You know, you have one really good year, the final year of your contract. You end up getting a max deal, and you agree to that max deal. Does that deal translate 5 years from now? Meaning that, does it still carry the same value? And I think for actors, if you look at actors that have had a run, let's say Leonardo DiCaprio as an example, if he had a run and at Titanic, the studio locked him in at a, I don't know, $100 million contract, but he's probably outperformed that contract at this point. So I don't know if you can do that again. I do think that when you're taking a cast and you're secluding them from not only society, if you will, but also from the ability to work on other projects, I just don't know that that's going to be something that's doable. So for me, I do think that that's a magic in a bottle. I don't know that we'll ever see that again, unless there's a number of actors that choose to work together and they do that as part of it. But I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I don't think it could ever happen again, in the sense, like, I also don't, unless you're doing like total remakes of, like, let's just, for an example, like Terminator 1 through 3, right? Like, let's say you're doing that, or you have enough source material and resources to do that. But I think also, especially we're seeing another writer's strike. You're seeing how people they want to make just as much as possible off one ever. I think if it was trying to do it now, right, you would be in hell with lawsuits and box office stuff. Like, for example, like, let's say one was able to come out before COVID, the other one was in the middle of COVID, and the third one was after COVID. It would be like, holy shit, what problems are you dealing with this?
Mm-hmm.
Will they ever get released? Are they going to do reshoots, stuff like that? Especially because now we've opened the Pandora's box of director's cuts. And mind you, like I said, I went to the marathon where they showed the full thing, but like, release the Snyder cut. Like I said, I'm happy they did, but it's one of the worst things Hollywood ever could have do, because now every film, if it flops, they're going to say, well, we have another cut over here that we didn't release. Check this out again. And they get to make more money on the same film twice. So I don't know. I don't think it'll ever work again.
Just like with Spider-Man No Way Home, how they added additional scenes into it, and they went and had another box office run. I mean, I get it. I just, like with you, man, I just don't know. I don't know that that's going to happen. So are you on number 43 right now, or did you say you're number 44 already?
I'm on 43.
You're on 43.
You're on 43 as well, correct?
I'm on 43 as well. I'm gonna step in front of you here. My 43 is better than my 49, in my opinion, and it's not going to be the same in your opinion. So the movie's Interstellar. Matthew McConaughey came out in 2014, directed by Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan's one of my favorite directors. I full disclosure, and if this pisses anybody off because we're spoiling anything, that's fine. But I didn't put Oppenheimer on the list only because I've only seen it once in theaters. Very well could end up on the list at a later time, depending on how that all works out. But this particular movie, so Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain. You also had Matt Damon show up, Michael Caine, who in British sounds like my cocaine, but that's okay. I love this film. I think that it's a dystopian future type film, and I just love the way that it was done. I could get people's gripes if you get all the way to the end and you deal with the whole bookcase thing, and that doesn't, the black hole of it all. You just don't understand that. I'm fine with the way that it was, because they did work with scientists who have theories on how these things would work. And I can accept their theory, and I can understand that as a part of the storyline. As far as the acting, it had me the entire time. I was on pins and needles watching this film. I had the emotion as they were calling home or receiving messages from home. I had the emotion at the end when he met his daughter. I know that that's your gripe with the film. However, Interstellar makes my list 100%, number 43.
Didn't make it at all. I expected more from that film. It's beautiful. It's one of those. It's more. I'd put it on. in the back. I can watch part of it and I'm happy. I don't want to watch the whole fucking thing. 2, I put it on to calibrate my TV in 4K because it's that beautiful. But that's about it.
Right.
Mine is the first actual creature feature I have, and it's one of my favorites of all time. But it's funny how low it is on my list, and it's Gremlins, the original Gremlins, not the sequel from 1984. Not much more needed to be said. It is a Christmas movie, so fuck you if you want to argue with me on that. But just Gizmo, Strike, the whole storyline, it's fun, it's quirky. It seemed like that film that they made, but they also thought was going to be a flop, and it turned out to be so totally opposite. I watch this every year for Christmas. My kids now adore this film. I've always been Gizmo tops my tree every year, so it's just one of those, like, it's my go-to creature feature of all time.
I think that's knowing you, that's a good place on your list. Like, if it were higher, I think that I would be able to criticize you a little bit more. But knowing you and your love for the film, I understand why you ranked it there, and I think that that's valid. Is it going to be on my list? No, not at all. Not a fucking chance. So that being the case, I like I said, I can agree with it on your list, respect it on your list, won't make my list. And actually, that kind of leads me into something else, because, you know, Gremlins is kind of a children's film, if you want to take it that way, although I think as an adult, I appreciate it a lot more. It's almost like the Goonies, if that makes sense. Like, you kind of have that thing that's on there with the Goonies. I had a hard time because I really wanted to put some cartoons on my list, and I didn't. Well, hold on. Before I say that, let me just double check my list here, because I initially had 3 cartoons on my list, and not one of them made it. And yeah, that is correct. I do not have a single cartoon, but I also had an issue with movies that resonated with me as a kid. So that being like the Goonies or Gremlins or movies like that. Those also didn't make my list. So it's interesting how those come about, because I feel like those have a place, and they should. And if we were doing a top 100 list, there would be a number of cartoon films that would be on there,
right,
that I would absolutely appreciate. I just don't know in my top 50 that I could do that. Now, you very well could have a number of I know for sure you have at least one cartoon on here, and I know what that is, and I'm not going to spoil it. But it was hard for me, and I'm just going to tell you, it was hard for me because I wanted to include some of those cartoons on here, and I couldn't. I just didn't, and I feel terrible about that. But I'm confident with the list that I built, that they just didn't fit.
Don't feel terrible for it, because, one, you're right, and I know you know which one it is. I think mine has a total of 2. As we were talking earlier, I just had a hard time putting, not mind you, not that I don't have any, right? But it was a harder time to put things like I'll just spoil it out there. The Mighty Ducks isn't on my list. It's a great movie. I loved it as a kid. I could talk about it all day. The Sandlot's not on my list, even though it's one of those movies I love and I talk about all the time, because I couldn't sit there and think, like, is it really a movie that I sit around as an adult going, I want to watch this all the fucking time? Now, do I want to watch it with my 15-year-old when she wants to be nostalgic and we're eating s'mores and talk baseball and all that? Yeah. Am I sitting there with my wife going, hey, let's have date night and watch The Sandlot? Very rarely am I throwing on a Don Bluth cartoon film, because, I mean, if we're going to argue this, that's the greatest cartoon filmmaker of any generation, in my opinion, is Don Bluth. I mean, his list is so long and incredible. And there's movies that even get confused for being his, like Fern Gully, and it's not. And it's just the fact, his art style, the chemistry, how he made it just dark enough to where we weren't pussies as kid. We were able to watch it, is great.
Right.
My 42, if I could jump ahead, is considered for the younger generation probably one of the greatest comedies of all time now. And it's The Hangover. And I'm surprised it made my list from 2009.
Oh, that almost made my list. That almost
here's
made
the thing.
My list.
It was one of those ones where it was almost off but on. But I'll say this: every time I thought about it being on my list, I was like, I love that movie. You could put it on right now, and I'll sit and watch it with you. So it was one of those things, like, I couldn't leave it off because of that. And when I kept seeing it come up, because, I mean, I did the research too. Like, I knew what I like to watch, but I looked up movies like, what are the top films of all time? What are the top comedies? What are the top sci-fi? All that. And tried to do my own ranking within other people's rankings. it was hilarious to me how often that was listed as one of the greatest comedies ever. And the more I thought, I was like, yeah, there's really not a lot of problems with that film.
No, and the reason why it didn't make, so originally it was my number 50. The Hangover was my number 50. That was going to make my list. I was going to run with it. The reason why it didn't make my list is because I think The Hangover 2 is better than The Hangover, but The Hangover 2 is the exact same plot as The Hangover. And it just jarred me a little bit. But I will say this, The Hangover is a great film, and it literally sat on my top 50, I think, until the day before I finalized it. So I cannot criticize you whatsoever for adding that onto your list. My number 42 probably won't be on your list, and that's fine. But it's a 1999 science fiction action film directed by the Wachowskis, starring Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Hugo Weaving, and others. The Matrix makes my list at number 42. I think, Keanu is not the best actor that's out there ever. Lawrence Fishburne is not the best actor that's out there ever. But man, I can't sit and think about movies that I've watched as a kid and as an adult and rank them without including The Matrix. When The Matrix came out, it was such a phenomenon because of the way that they started using CGI, of the way that they started implementing a lot of the graphics that they were doing. And the story is just incredible to me. And so The Matrix makes my list, and that's where it's at.
If you were to ask me top 50 movies that changed, or even top 5 or 10 that changed the history of filmmaking and importance, The Matrix makes it. If you were to ask me mine, it doesn't. It's the sense of like, I like the movie, don't get me wrong. I was in The Matrix, like aspect of like, I really fell deep into it. But I think I got such a bad taste in my mouth for how it finished that it almost sours the whole project. Does that make sense? And it's a rare film to do that.
That makes sense.
It's one of those things, like The Matrix was so good. And then the rest was like, what the fuck happened here? It's weird. And I even tried to watch the newest one, which I've never finished. I fall asleep every damn time. It's boring as fuck. And I just felt like it's one of the most pivotal and important movies of our time. It changed filmmaking. It changed how you thought of films. It changed how you parodied films, everything. But it doesn't make my list. And I mean, that's great. And that's fine. And that's why it's subjective. And it's funny because it's one of those ones, am I making a mistake by not putting it on mine? But like I said, it would make a totally different kind of list for me. But I mean, good pick, B-Word. I'll give you that.
Thank you. Now, I want to save my number 1 for last. So my number 41, excuse me. So if you don't mind, sir, would you please spoil what your number 41 is and wrap up your list on the top 50 numbers 50 through 41?
So for mine is the 1984 film I was talking about. I think it's one of the most pivotal films. Like if I was to rank kids movies for us, right? Like the ones that we grew up and watched all the time when you went to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or whatever it was and you rented movies. This was that film. If you couldn't find anything, you could rent it and be happy and feel good. There were lessons to be learned in it. It was one of those, like, I think movies nowadays are missing the moral aspects of the sense of like to be a good person, to be trained by somebody or anything. But it's The Karate Kid, 1984. Great fucking film.
Okay.
Wax on, wax off. It's one of those movies, like I could watch this movie all the time. I love everything about it. I love the new fan theories where who's actually the bad guy, especially because they continued it with the TV series on Netflix. But I love me some Karate Kid. And I remember as a kid, it was one of those ones, my sister loved the sequel better than the first. And rewatching it as an adult, I'm like, how does anybody like any other one rather than the original? But that is my 41.
That's not a bad pick. I'll give that to you. I cannot criticize that one. Does not make my list, but I'll give you that one. My number 41 probably doesn't make your list either. My number 41 is a sequel. It is one of the best films, in my opinion, that this actor has done. My number 41 came out in 1995, and I remember sitting in San Francisco with my uncle and my cousin, and we're watching this movie live in the theater. And when Jim Carrey comes out of the ass of the rhino in Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, I could not contain myself. You have the bumblebee tuna, the guano, you have all that sort of stuff. Chicago. You had everything about it. Ace Ventura almost made my list. Ace Ventura 2, in my opinion, is better than Ace Ventura. And so that's why that made my list there. Okay. My number 41, I can guarantee you is not on your list, but that's where I'm going to rank it.
It's not. No, because there's a few reasons. One, the sequel's not better. There are moments that are funnier, but there's no way. I mean, it's essentially almost a straight to fucking DVD or VHS, as we used to call it back in the day, film compared to.
You shut your whore mouth, Jacob.
I'm not going to, because you gave me kudos for the Karate Kid, and thank you very much. I will not give you kudos for saying Ace Ventura 2 is better than Ace Ventura 1, and that it is high. It's thank God it's not in your top 10, but you're telling me it's above the other one. Like, you couldn't make that 50. I would have gave it to you if you said 49 or 50, but you said 41 for this one. That's a rough one.
41.
That's a rough one.
I think Ace Ventura When Nature Calls is better than those other 9 movies that made my list this episode.
I'm speechless, actually. I'm proud of you. I don't know. Like, what do I say to this? Like you like rhino buttholes more than other films.
Rhino buttholes. Absolutely. Well, with that finalizes our first episode of the Bleach Bros Top 50 movies of all time. Again, these episodes will come out on the third week of each month, so I hope that you're enjoying this in the third week of August, or if you're listening to us later, maybe you found us and are listening to the episode later on, that's perfectly fine. However, our next top 50 will come out the third week of September, so we look forward to being able to entertain you then. And Jake, with that, what do you got for me?
Thanks for all the dirty talk, and come back and get sanitized. Chicago. This is Jake from the Bleach Bros podcast, and thank you for listening to today's episode. I want to bring to your attention our Linktree. Visit Linktree/Bleach Bros podcast for access to all of our socials, merch, and streaming sites. Linktree is linktr.ee/Bleach Bros podcast, all one word. And if you enjoy our content, make sure to give us a like, give us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and also invite your friends.